Good evening. I am not Dan. I am Marie Fries-McSbarron, and tonight I am here with the candidate for the 46th District in Norwich for State Rep, Andy Lockwood. Now, you've probably recognized that name, and so without further ado, I'm going to let Andy introduce himself and give his background.
Okay. Well, most of you in New London don't know me. No, that's not true. First of all, I'm saying hi to everybody here and seeing how you all are doing. For those of you who do not know me in Norwich, which may not be so easy to believe after I've been doing doors for the last 9 months, but I'm Andrew Lockwood. I live on East Main Street in Norwich. Moved there about a year ago. I'm running for state rep in the what they call the downtown district, which is the voting district 4th, 5th, and 6th, which really cover, I would say, 3/4 of the town. It's not a small district like they try to say it is. Norwich has a lot to offer. The mayor there has kept the tax rolls down intact for the last couple of years. I like his philosophy about we're not going to charge anybody any more taxes than they have to pay. He bases his budget on a need basis and not a want basis, so that they cover what they need to keep the city functional and intact first. And then if they have extra spending money, that's what they look to do with that. But he's also looking to develop Norwich. I'm looking to go to Hartford and help him with a lot of those ideas about bringing more businesses, more jobs, and expanding the tax base in Norwich. Let me see, I've been in real estate, I've owned and managed car dealerships, been in the restaurant facility and hospitality. Some of my friends that see me out about know I'm one of the highest ranked Uber drivers around the area. Not that I've been doing that for a while because of an injury I had. I went back to school when I was in my 40s to get my associate's, bachelor's, and the law degree all in a span of 5 years, and earned all that. And used to own a couple businesses here in New London before I decided to move to Norwich. Some people are wondering why I left New London after Lorraine and I, after 32 years of marriage, decided to, I will say, very amicably part ways. We still see each other. We have 4 grandchildren now. My daughter just had her 4th child, finally had a boy, in a very serious situation, which we might talk about a little bit tonight, women's health, because it's very important. So my son Andrew and I bought a house in Norwich and moved there, and my 91-year-old mother needed help living on her own, so she moved in with us a little while ago, and so we're all there now, basically.
Great. So let's talk about some of the issues that are affecting Connecticut.
Okay.
Obviously, most people in Connecticut say their number one issue is the high taxes.
Oh, absolutely.
And how can we either reduce them or find a way to encourage businesses to come and generate more revenue? So what are your ideas about that topic?
Well, you know, there's a lot of solutions floating out there, and we can discuss a few of them as we go on about how to raise more revenue. And revenues, in my opinion, is really not the problem. We have a lot of revenue coming from a lot of areas. A lot of that revenue is wasted, not earmarked and put where it's supposed to go. It goes in the mysterious general fund,
Right.
where everybody in the legislature gets a hold of it and spends it any way they think that they see fit. Most of it, a lot of studies, a lot of bonus money goes out, but it never really gets to where it's going to.
Right.
So, first of all, I think we can see in the country, Connecticut being ranked 47th in the country, there's a reason for that. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont are starting to boom again. You know, everybody says, oh, this Trump guy. Well, this Trump guy's got gross national product at 4%. Unemployment is the lowest it's ever been. African Americans, Spanish community, Latinos are getting benefits from having jobs all over the place now, except for one place, here. August, we lost 1,200 jobs. People that are running against me, and many of my opponents are bragging about the jobs they got. Well, they better read the report, because 1,200 people left just in August who lost jobs, who had enough and left. So that's untrue. If we don't roll back regulations and ease up on the bone-crushing regulations that are stopping businesses from coming here, the average people don't realize one thing. Businesses, Marie, will not come here unless they have benefits to them. The
Right.
high cost of doing business in the state of Connecticut is terrible.
Right.
And if businesses look at one thing, their bottom line. So if they're not making money, they're not coming.
Right. So what do you think about candidate Stefanowski's plan to eliminate the state income tax?
You know, that's a very good question. The day when I had my interview this week asked me that same question. You know what? The income tax situation was supposed to be a temporary situation. And I said to them, you know what? That program should have been eliminated back in the days when Jody Rell and Governor Rowland were in, and we had a booming economy and money in the surplus, and we had a big rainy day fund. Should have been eliminated there. But unfortunately, everybody takes a look at that pie and say, hey, we got money coming in, we're not going to stop that. So you know what? I prefer that people have their own money to invest throughout the state in their own lives. You know, I was a big fan of Ronald Reagan, and he really believed that if you invest money back into into going out to dinner, shopping, buying furniture, buying houses, that money all rolls back into everybody. You know, business trades, living trades, and it really makes the economy boom. And I think that we got away from that a lot. I think we're seeing that a lot come back now, where people are comfortable. The stock market's booming, houses are selling. Well, maybe not in Connecticut, because doing real estate, they're not selling here well. But around us, in neighboring states, they're taking advantage of our disadvantage.
Right. I think people don't understand that if you reduce the tax for businesses, that they have more money to invest, to hire more people, or pay their employees more.
My brother lives in the South, and down there, one of the companies, he has a friend that works there. They hired 400 people this year. They're building another factory. They have the money to do so. You know, and we're really a state, so we shouldn't get into federal stuff much. But you know, when the federal government's saying, "Oh, that new tax plan is giving crumbs to people," well, I don't know about you, but if I can get an extra $1,000 in my check a month, yeah, I'm all for that. That's not crumbs to me. So.
Right. So, candidate Ned Lamont has said that he is interested in pursuing a statewide property tax. What's your position on that?
Absolutely ridiculous. Okay, this is just another way to try to raise revenue. And you know, the factual matter here is this. This has been going on. This isn't just something new with the party in charge right now. They're always coming up with these ideas. They don't know how to fix a problem, so it's let's raise more revenue and throw it at the problem.
Right.
That's not fixing the problem.
Right.
Okay, so saying, oh, let's get more, we'll charge you if you live in, well, they're telling the Norwich taxpayers, not only are you going to pay the city of Norwich, but you're going to pay Hartford in addition to. Right. What they're not telling people is they're going to pay the city tax as well.
Right.
And then pay the state.
Right.
That's the confusion they're trying to confuse people. So you're going to get doubly taxed on your property, which is insane. People are struggling now to pay their taxes.
Right.
And we don't need any more taxes.
Right, I agree.
At all.
I agree. So also, Ned Lamont has also said that he's interested in putting tolls up in Connecticut.
Yeah, that, you know something, we've been to, I have a very small staff this time. When I was in New London, I had a lot of volunteers, a lot of people knew me. Not a lot of people up there know me, but we have die-hard people that are coming every day from, truthfully, 7, 8 towns away from there to fight for us. And we're hearing the same thing at the doors. Like for instance, if you lived in, say, not so much Norwich because that's fairly close to EB, but let's just go up to Griswold, for instance, which is only 10 minutes away from Norwich. A proof study has been done which would show if a guy from that area, if tolls go in and a guy from that area goes to EB to work, it's going to cost his family right around $3,400 a year.
Right.
So if, you know, I don't see how Ned Lamont thinks people that are middle class, working families, and even the working poor can afford $3,400 more a year out of their paycheck.
Exactly.
And on top of that, okay, the bad thing is that back in the 80s when they took the tolls away, we'll be forced to pay back the federal government about $2 million for every year that we agreed not to put in tolls, which is about $30 to $50 billion with a B, billion dollars that we have to pay the federal government back to get these tolls.
I've heard people say that, oh, the federal government would never really make us pay that. What do you think?
They're going to make us pay that.
Right.
It's ludicrous because this is just another scheme to get more revenue in. But here's the other bad thing about tolls, okay? Yeah, I don't know if you and Dan you guys probably have Easy Pass because you travel sometimes out of state. Right. Well, I travel a lot out of state, but for some reason I've never got Easy Pass.
Yeah.
Well, a couple years ago when they're rebuilding the Tappan Zee Bridge, you know, my son and I were going to Miami to see the races. There's no toll booth there because I used to always just pay the $5 and go on.
Right.
There's no toll booth. It said no tolls in effect. So I figured, okay, so they're working on the bridge. There's no toll. Wrong, they got electric tolls on the other side.
Right.
So they take your plate down. So I got billed $5. Well, they sent it to the wrong address.
Right.
Okay? So by the time I got the bill, because of the late charge of $100 each month, it was $500 for all these late charges plus $5, and they said they were going to suspend my license.
Right.
Which, let's put it this way, if you're working poor or middle class in Connecticut and you don't have Easy Pass and you forget that, say you go through 5 tolls, $5 a piece, okay, they send you 5 different bills, you miss them all, you could literally pay $2,500 in those fees.
Right.
The worst thing is Ned Lamont wants you to lose your driver's license in 60 days if you haven't paid those tolls.
Right.
So now you have no license, can't pay the tolls, can't go to work. I had a guy tell me at that house just yesterday, if that happens to me, I'm gonna make the state pay for me then. I'll sit home and go on welfare. I was like, what? He goes, I'm a working poor guy, Andy. I live paycheck to paycheck as it is. I can't afford another $100 out of my check a month.
Right.
I'm trying to raise my young children. It's ridiculous. So.
Right. I heard a statistic just last night about traffic on the Connecticut highways. And because I know that they've marketed this as, most of the toll is going to come from out-of-state drivers. The percentage of out-of-state drivers on the Connecticut highways is only 35%.
Right.
That means 65%.
Connecticut residents are going to pay those tolls.
Correct.
And it's already been proven that those tolls are going to cost about $430,000 a day to run. Right. So they're going to be progressive like some other states have. If they're not making the money in the daytime, they're just going to keep raising the toll things until they get to where they have to make every day. So you might go to work, it might cost you $5, it might cost you $20 coming home.
Right.
But they don't want you to know those little details because it's just to help your state just a little bit more out of your paycheck. I mean, how much more are they going to take? And I'm really concerned about citizens in Norwich and in Connecticut in general. How much more are they going to put up with this garbage before they realize these guys in Hartford have no clue of solving the problem? They've had 8 years to solve the problem. Look at when Malloy came into office last time. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, please reelect me because we have a surplus. 4 days after he's elected, he tells us we're $3 billion in the hole in a deficit.
Right.
That doesn't happen in 3 days. They knew it going in.
Right.
They're just lying to the public here in Connecticut. And I think people in Connecticut this year have had enough. I think they're waking up to the fact that, they need to put legislatures in there that are going to correct this problem.
Right.
The first thing that goes on there is we have to fix the economic crisis right off the bat before anything else is done. Right. Tolls, raising other money. Let's try something new. Let's try to cut spending. Right. Go in there and find out what the problem is and eliminate things that are costing the state a ton of money.
Right. I agree. So one of the things that I know that you have on your walking cards is the monies, earmarked money should go where they're supposed to go. And the example that you give is that lottery dollars for education.
Absolutely. You know what? Most taxpayers are paying 45 to 60% of their tax bill to education out of the taxes they pay on their homes, on their residents, okay? Which is ludicrous. Mm-hmm. The lottery is designed to fund education throughout the state of Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And God only knows we have a new lottery game starting every month. Every time we need more money, we get Keno now. We got, right. It used to be Keno just at the casinos. Now you can go in every bar, every store, every restaurant and get Keno. Right. And, there's 10 million stretch golf games that come out every week, plus all the new Powerballs and all this other stuff. It's insane. They really need to take that money and lock it up when it comes in and give it back to the towns for education. Right. Norwich is short 20% on their education. All out through the state in southeast Connecticut, we're short on education, and we're short because we don't get hardly any of that money. Right. And my question is to Hartford, where's that money go then? Oh, yeah, the general fund, which is another word for we don't know where it goes and we spend it irresponsibly. Right. Like this summer. Can you imagine how it would help New London and Norwich? The $2,000 bonuses they gave out, which came out to about $80 million for the state union employees that work for the state because Malloy promised them a bonus before he left. Right. What if your town had some of that money for education? Right. Right. What about the $10 million toll study that's been paid to see if we need the tolls? Why doesn't that go to some towns for education?
I agree. I totally agree.
So it's not that the money's not there. They're not appropriating it where it needs to go.
Right.
And they got to stop that.
So I understand that you have a plan, a proposal to streamline the DMV. Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay. Well, for people that don't know, I was in the car business 20 years of my life. It started when I was about 21 years of age. I became one of the youngest general managers in southeastern Connecticut at a Honda dealership. Had a lot of great ideas there. We did a lot of things to make money, and we went from doing about 40 Hondas a month to doing 200 Hondas a year. we really expanded the business there. So what is kind of neat nowadays, if you go, say you want to go and buy a brand new car, you don't have plates. You can go in any dealership in Connecticut now. They can register you right there, give you a 2-year registration, and give you plates.
Right.
So let's be honest. I know you've had to go to DMV recently. Last year when I moved to Norwich, I had to change my license. Now, when you do that at DMV now, they don't have a special license window.
Right.
You get in the mix of everybody else. So you're on a circulating scale of when you get into that line.
Right.
So months ago when I was sitting there doing that, I said, I hear all these people complaining. The workers at DMV are mad. The people registering cars are mad because you have to wait hours. So I said, you know what? Why can't this simply be streamlined? Car dealerships now can do registration, so why don't we put the availability to any car dealership in the Connecticut that does registration now can renew your registration, give you new plates or renew your plates, and cut the lines at DMV totally. Duplicate more places like AAA with the license machines where they can take and do photo licenses. Now DMV has AAA sometimes has a problem because if you don't have the right document, they have to send you a motor vehicle.
Right.
Like AAA isn't smart enough to take a copy of a birth certificate to prove who you are, you say you are. So that should be streamlined at AAA too, where they can, scan it. We have scanners at home. I'm sure they could get a scanner for AAA and do this, and it would do a lot of things. First of all, it would take the burden off DMV people, because I never used to look at it through their point of view. But if you think about it, they got 300 or 400 people every day in there with 6 or 7 attendees doing all this work and being overwhelmed by it. The people that come are mad because you've kept me there for hours.
Right.
You're mad because you have to put up with all these people. And most of those people are probably great people that just, a friend of mine said, oh, they're so ugly in there today. And I said, if you had to sit there all day taking care of all these people with not much of a break and it just never ended stopping stuff and you dealing with mad people because you're mad, that's what happens. So by streamlining that, also what it does for dealerships is gives them an opportunity to get a new customer. Right. You might come in for an oil change, you might need some parts, you might be interested in getting a new car. And if not, DMV could give a small fee to these dealerships to pay them to have somebody sit there. And it's basically creating another job for the dealership for more employees where somebody's there that can do the registrations for them.
Sort of like the dealerships are doing the emissions testing now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's kind of like an all-in-one thing. Yeah. It's not eliminating DMV, but it's taking the strain off DMV so they can be more efficient.
Right.
And if they're more efficient, they're going to be happier, and people getting their stuff done is going to be happier as well. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it saves, the ultimate thing, saves money.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a big issue that we have in this country, obviously, is immigration. And in Connecticut, we have been designated by the governor a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state.
Correct.
And some cities around Connecticut, like New London, claim to be sanctuary cities. What's your position on that?
Okay, well, I guess we should explain, because a lot of people, I've had to explain this to people at doors, because they believe that and I've had arguments with people to nauseam, they believe that the Connecticut Constitution trumps the federal Constitution on immigrations. That Connecticut can have the governor wave a wand, pass this law, and if it's in conflict with the U.S. Constitution, oh well. That's not the case. Under the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution, any laws that affect the federal law trumps it. It means it has the supreme power to say that law is illegal. So in immigration, the states can do more stricter restraints on immigration, but they can't do less.
Right.
So by saying, federal government, you say we can't be a sanctuary state, too bad, we're going to be a sanctuary state. That's above the Supremacy Clause, and it's illegal.
Right.
Now what can happen is the federal government might do nothing, but they can also sue the state in federal Supreme Court, or they can also stop funding to the state. Right. They can just say, okay, you want to be on your own? We're not paying you. That's already starting to come up in California. The president has said, you don't get back in line, we're not going to fund you money.
Right.
So, and I think you can see the bad out effects by that. Stacey Chadwick in Norwich, a 5-time deported person, was kind of hovered by protection and ends up killing this poor young lady. And he should have been deported a long time before that happened.
Right.
People were yelling at me a couple weeks ago, oh, you don't care, I think we should have open borders. Anybody should come allowed here. I said, look, you know what? If you want to come to America, I think you have an obligation to come here legally, like many people before you.
Right.
Let's talk to people that are sitting in line all these months and years to come to the country legally and being told, okay, now you're a U.S. citizen because you earned a right, versus people that just cross the border illegally, hide in the country, and then they want some type of exoneration or amnesty, so they're not punished or whatever. People have to understand something. When you cross the border illegally, you've already committed a crime.
Right.
And people say, oh, they're undocumented. No, you've committed a crime crossing the border illegally.
Right.
Here's a good point that people also don't realize. Coming through, like if you leave Argentina and come through Mexico to come to the United States, your first sanctuary country is Mexico.
Right.
You've crossed into another bordered area
Right.
for protection and asylum.
Right.
Doesn't give you the right to go through their country to come to our country to seek asylum from your country.
Right. If you believe that your life is in danger in your country and you're seeking asylum, you have to seek it at the first border country that you reach.
Or if you're coming to the United States, you have to come to a port of entry.
Correct.
You can't just cross in through the borders. You have
Correct.
to come to a legal port of entry where they'll determine if you have a need-based reason
Right.
of fear to be in our country.
Right.
So, look, America has a lot of great things to offer for a lot of people. But over the course of history, the majority of people that come here that want to share that take on the American dream, the American ideals, and they come here legally and apply legally. And it's not easy to come here, and it's that way for a reason.
Right.
We just can't let in everybody that wants to come to America.
Right.
I mean, there's, Stacey Chadwick's person, he never would have been admitted here.
Right.
He had felonies before where he came from.
Right.
So,
Molly Tibbetts, the young
same
girl
way.
that was just killed. Yeah.
yeah, it's
exactly.
the same way.
So it's not something that, as a state rep, you're going to support in Hartford.
No, I think that Connecticut should not be a sanctuary state. I fully just believe from my education that it is illegal. I think as time goes on, it's going to be, the federal government's going to start doing things around the country to stop that.
Right.
Because,
So another thing I know that people are really concerned about is socialized medicine, socialized healthcare. I understand that there's a lot of people who may not have had access to health care
Right.
prior to the Affordable Care Act, but what's your position on that?
They talk about the single payer system, or as for lack of a better word, sometimes call it forced on healthcare. One of the proposals that I saw a long time back for healthcare, which would be advantageous, is where we can sell healthcare across state lines everywhere. So it makes it more of a competition thing where, like if you live in Connecticut and you can find a better plan in Arizona, you'd be allowed to do that. That hasn't been the case. I think that, the old saying is, and here we go back to Ronald Reagan, anytime the government gets involved to your family making critical decisions with your own life is a bad thing, because it is. Believe me, people need health care and they need affordable health care. I'm not so sure how much as a state rep I can do to infect that. It's really kind of a federal thing.
Right.
That the federal government's been working on. There's been quite a few plans dipped around. When the Obamacare was in effect, that didn't seem to work out all that well. There's a lot of bright people that if they got together, instead of being nonpartisan and being all partisan about, well, it's going to be our way or no way, to come up with a situation. But, when they're talking about socialized medicine, like you and I have talked about before, that young kid in Great Britain who lost his life because he was forced to stay in a hospital, he wasn't given options because of their system, where it kind of determines who gets what kind of health care and who doesn't get certain types of health care.
Right.
Which,
armed guards in front of the hospital
right.
to prevent his parents from taking him out to get
the
care
health
in
care
another
he
country.
needed. And maybe that, maybe that wouldn't have worked, but it gives you the an experimental drug. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but unfortunately, he was in a grave situation where he may not have lived anyways. So you're a parent, I'm a parent. I'm sure if my daughter came to me and say, Dad, this is the only shot I have to live, I want to have that shot, why should we be telling them no?
Right. Exactly.
And maybe it would work and save more lives. But that's the problem with it. When government gets involved and they're telling you what you can and cannot do, that becomes a bigger problem than what it is. There's got to be, healthcare is one of the biggest things to solve in this country, and there's a bunch of smart people, and they got to get off this partisan thing that it's got to be this way or that way, and figure out a plan that works fairly for everybody.
Right. So I noticed that one of your issues is the regulations to businesses that are preventing businesses from coming and driving businesses out of Connecticut. So what do you think what would your plan be to help with this?
Well, we can go through everything on that, even starting with just the cost of doing business for utilities. the day paper asked me the other day about privatized utility companies versus like, Northeast, it's not Northeast anymore, it's now
Eversource.
Eversource. Excuse me, guys, didn't mean to, But, just comparing for living in two cities that do that, New London doesn't have its own power company.
Yeah.
Norwich does.
Yep.
There are some advantages to a public, a power company owned by the city and run by the city. You get a monthly bill for all your stuff every month. There's no surprises. You can kind of budget it out where you have water, lights, gas, sewage, all on one bill. You know what your usage are. And for businesses, that's a big effect. They really got to know what their cost is every month to figure out what their bottom line is going to be. Eversource, since they came out, they now charge, over the last few years, they've developed a fee, as they call it, for a delivery fee, which is pretty close to being what your regular bill is if you look at it.
Yep.
So if your bill's $89, you're getting a delivery fee for $89. So you're basically paying them $170 for your bill, and that fee either goes to taxes or research and development or raising. Rhode Island, when the crisis happened over there just a little while ago in their last budget, they reduced the cost of energy to get people to come there. When Connecticut knew how hard it was going, they're talking about raising utilities.
Yep.
So utilities is always a big factor for businesses. Insurance is another big factor. And let's say this, if they now are considering to come to Connecticut and you're telling your employees, look, we're going to move to Connecticut, you might get a statewide property tax, and in addition to a municipal tax on your house, you might have to pay tolls. So if you want to live in, say, Stamford and you're working in Hartford, could cost you $4,000 or $5,000 there more a year. All those things to the company and the employees become a big factor on that. The entity tax just for starting a business here, they've talked about years eliminating that. They haven't done so as of yet. Every little thing just nibbles away at that bottom line for a business. So, and I'm not talking about doing corporate welfare for businesses either, but there's got to be some. New York is doing a 10-year incentive plan to have businesses come there. Massachusetts is doing an incentive plan to come there. We're not giving away the whole farm, but reduced energy, reduced taxes, if you guarantee and bring so many employees. But they have catch-alls. Like when Pfizer came here, for instance, there was no catch-all there.
Right.
They got a bunch of benefits, and at the end of time, they had a free walk-away clause.
Right.
Where if you put in a contract with them, if you leave, you're paying a penalty to the state. That penalty usually is strict enough where it deters them from leaving.
Right.
So I think if Connecticut doesn't get on the bandwagon here, the neighboring states are not. Look at what happened to GE. They left here because they got a better opportunity to go to Massachusetts.
Right.
And when they left, look at all the houses empty in West Hartford that are not going to sell now because who's going to buy those houses at those prices? Right. And GE employees, they were offered, to even get them housing over there if they left, and they left. Mm-hmm. So we cannot continue to have big businesses leave. As they scream, this tax break is only helping the super rich. But to have businesses come, you need investors with enough power to start up enough companies where they can pay enough employees to keep those companies going. Right. I think even Connecticut missed out on Amazon. When I was talking to some people, I said, here's a great idea. Fort Trumbull is still empty down there. Why aren't they pursuing an idea for Amazon to come there? You got waterway for shipping, you got rail, and you also have access to 95. It was a great hub for it. And I don't know what, and obviously, for whatever reason, it wasn't proposed properly, and Amazon's not coming. And look at all the employees they lost. Those employees buy houses, and to reduce taxes, we need to expand all these grand lists throughout Connecticut.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if we have more people coming here, buying more houses here, renting more apartments here, doing more condos here, buying cars here, buying groceries, all that stuff, it's going to add up to giving us more revenue in the state.
Right.
And if we keep reducing people by leaving the state, they're just going to tax the rest of the people here, out of the state to death. They just are. It's just so.
Right. There's a big exodus of residents.
Oh, absolutely.
From Connecticut, and they're saying it's seniors, retired seniors, and college graduates between 18 and 21 years of age. Those people are leaving Connecticut to go find jobs and a place with, like, as far as seniors are concerned, a place to make their retirement go farther.
Right. Well,